Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you to my history reaction channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the war that changed the English language. This is part 3 of the Miniwars series by Oversimplified. As always, I will put a link to the original video down in the description below. If you're one of the 3 or 4 people in the country that still hasn't subscribed to Oversimplified, I highly encourage that you head over there and join the rest of us in supporting Oversimplified. They make great oversimplified videos of history that teach a lot, but also are just introduction to topics that we can expand and explore if we're interested. And speaking of being interested, I am not particularly strong in English history, and by English history I mean the history of England. I probably know as much about the English language history as I do about the country, primarily because my wife is currently working on her master's in linguistics, and as a result, she's always kind of dragging me into it with her. So I've learned a lot in the last couple of years about the history and evolution of some of these languages, such as English. So I thought this would be a fun video. I'm doing all of Oversimplified. I'm working my way through Miniwars right now anyway, but I think I would have done this regardless because I'm finding language history to be increasingly interesting and fascinating. Anyway, enough about that. Let's just go ahead and get into this. Again, not my strong point, but the Battle of Hastings, which this is going to be about, is well known, and if you know anything about English history, that should be one of the things you know about. With that said, I have not seen this video before. I've only seen one of the 4 Miniwars videos, and that's the last one, which we will do next. But in the meantime, let's just see what this one talked about.
This video was made possible by Skillshare, an online learning community with over 17,000 classes in just about anything you can imagine.
Cool.
Keep watching until the end of the video to learn.
Is that guaranteed? Because I can sure imagine a lot.
Learn how you can get your first 2 months for free.
All right.
England in the Middle Ages. The sun is shining. The birds are singing.
Wait a minute. The sun shines in England? That's news. Birds are singing. But is there a nightingale? That's what I want to know.
The children are playing in the village square. What a wonderful time to be alive. Hey, you're dying of dysentery. And also we're being raided by Vikings.
Yeah.
What an awful time to be alive. It's the year 900.
All
Europe
right.
is a Viking's wet dream. Raids galore. Hey, you want to go raid Paris? Okay. That particular raid didn't go too well, but the king of the Franks said, "You guys are pretty tough and scary. How about we give you land in northern France, and in return, you protect us from other Vikings?" And it was agreed. The Vikings set up the Duchy of Normandy, and then they went full-on French, converting...
Yeah, and that was a brilliant move on the part of the French. These guys are dangerous. They keep coming. Yes, they failed this time, but they're not going to stop. So we'll just give them some land for them to control for themselves. In exchange, they will help protect us from other Viking groups.
To Christianity, learning the language, and making babies with the locals. England also had its fair share of Viking problems.
So that's the origin of Normandy. Normandy literally comes from the Normans, the Northmen, the Vikings.
In the 800s, Danish Vikings had conquered most of the country, but the Anglo-Saxons eventually managed to kick them out.
So the Danelaw, that is a section of England that is controlled by the Vikings. They have their own laws there. And there's kind of this relationship between the Crown of England and the Danes there in the Danelaw region that allows them to coexist more or less peacefully, but the Danes kind of control themselves.
Although they left behind a bunch of Viking settlers. Now this guy's king. He sucks. Replace him with his brother. And he was like, "Hey baby, how you doing?" And had a son. And then turned around and was like, "Hey baby, how you doing?" And had another son. And then he died and no one was sure which son to make king. This one, because he's older. Not if I have anything to do with it. That works for us too. Then he grew up and married the Duke of Normandy's daughter and had a bunch of kids. Remember this one. He's important. Then his advisors came.
All right, Edward's important. Got it.
Came to him and said, "Hey man, all those Viking settlers that are living here, they might band together and kill you."
Uh-oh.
Well then why don't we kill them first? And so it was. This pissed off the Danish king, who launched an invasion, and the Vikings conquered England once again. Then the Anglo-Saxons unconquered it, then the Vikings reconquered it. The king's family had to go into exile, including Edward. Remember him? He went to Normandy where he lived for 30 years. He and his brother Alfred tried to return to England to retake the throne from the Vikings, but they were betrayed by the Earl of Wessex, who said, "Hey friend, I'll take you to London where all the nobles are waiting to make you king. Oh no, look out, red hot poker in the eyes.
Ow.
I can't see. And thus you can't be king." Edward
Yeah, so this is Earl Godwin. Remember him too, because his son will be Godwinson, which is important for where we're going here. But yeah, Edward here, he's been raised in Normandy, which is part of France now. Yes, it is basically a Viking settlement in France, but by this point they've got assimilated a lot of the French culture. They're speaking French. So keep all that in mind as we go forward.
Edward then escaped back to Normandy. After a few more Viking kings came and went, one finally died without an heir, and Edward was called back to England where he became king. And that's where our story begins.
All right, we spent a whole 2 minutes just to get to the beginning, but that's one thing I like about Oversimplified. Sure, the channel is oversimplified, but he always, in most of his videos anyway, he does take the time to build the context, to show us what came before that sets the stage for the main event that he's covering, which I really appreciate.
Here's the thing about becoming a king in the Middle Ages. Often your entire country won't support you at first. You can be vulnerable to rebellions, and it's up to you to take control. Fortunately for Edward, there was already a super powerful guy who had a lot of control over England, and if Edward could get his support, then England would be his. Who is this guy? Oh, piss, it's the guy who gave my brother the red-hot poker in the eyes. After an awkward moment where Edward exiled Godwin from the country, he eventually had to give in and let him keep his earldom, possibly after Godwin gave him a bunch of gold and said he was very, very sorry. King Edward also married Godwin's daughter. Then Godwin died, and his massive fortune was passed down to his sons, who all became earls. In particular, this one became the new Earl of Wessex.
Yeah, so Harald Godwinson, son of Godwin, he is a key player.
Harald Godwinson was now King Edward's brother-in-law. He was a close advisor to the king, a brave warrior who had proven himself in battle against the Welsh, and in many ways he was almost like a co-king. Uh-oh, Edward got old and he's on his deathbed. Possibly for religious reasons, or maybe because he wasn't happy about having to marry her, he didn't boink his wife, and as a result has no kids, meaning there's no obvious heir to the throne, meaning I'm gonna be king. He does have a grandnephew, it could be him.
No, those guys can disappear conveniently.
No, let's go with me. Just one problem. I mentioned that Edward's mother was a Norman. Edward grew up in Normandy, and he had a lot of Norman friends. The current Duke of Normandy was William the Bastard. Why was he called the Bastard? One day his father was sneaking out of his castle when his advisors said, "Where are you going?" To the tanner's shop? Why? To get a
I know where this is
tan.
going. Yeah.
But
that is not what a tanner's shop is. Tannery is for making leather. It's for chemically treating and drying the leather to make it usable for products.
It's a lie. Firstly, because tanners give you leather, not tans, and secondly, because he was really going to see the tanner's daughter. One thing leads to another, and out comes baby William, born out of wedlock. Thus, an absolute bastard. His father died
No, a literal bastard.
when William was 7 or 8, and he became the new Duke. He spent most of his childhood narrowly avoiding assassination, which probably turned him into the big balls tough guy he's remembered as today. In 1051, the town of Alençon tried to rebel against him, and the townspeople beat on dead animal skins as an insult to his commoner mother. William was furious, and he responded by, well, let's just say it wasn't pretty. That's the kind of guy we're dealing with here. William and Edward were good friends, and Edward allegedly promised that William could have the English throne after him. A decade later, Harald Godwinson even visited William, and pledged an oath to him over holy relics, promising that William could be the next king of England. Although it's possible Harold only did it because William was holding his family hostage.
That'd do it. Sometimes you gotta play dirty, right?
So when William heard that the king was on his deathbed, he said, "Hooray, I'm gonna be king." So now you have two extremely powerful men who both think they're about to become the next king.
No, we've got 3, because there's another one about to jump in.
But wait, this guy is the king of Norway. He spent most of his life as a warrior for hire, fighting for whoever would give him the most gold. You name a place, he probably fought a war.
Yeah, he was all over the world. This guy was literally everywhere. And yeah, he's gonna change the entire dynamics of this coming conflict, because it's not gonna be a 2-way fight, it's gonna be a 3-way fight. And that's going to change the course of events.
Poland? Yep. Estonia? Yep. Against pirates in the Mediterranean? Yep. The Holy Lands? Sicily? And Bulgaria? Yep. He got crazy rich off the back of it and was swimming in gold. Then he returned home and became king. One of the previous Norwegian kings had made an agreement with one of England's Viking kings, saying that when that Viking king died, the king of Norway would get the English throne. Hardrada felt that because of this agreement, he was now entitled to the English throne. He was also eager to go on one last big conquest that would turn him into a legend. So when he got word that Edward was on his deathbed, he thought, I'm going to invade England, and then I'm going to be king. So now we have
He did become a legend, but not in the way he wanted.
3 extremely powerful men who all think they're about to become the next king of England, and that means somebody's probably about to get hurt.
2 somebodies are about to get hurt.
Back in England, Harald Godwinson is watching over the dying King Edward. Suddenly, he comes out with a shocking announcement. Hey, everyone, gather in. That's it. Come closer. Don't be shy. Okay, so I've got bad news. The king is dead. I know, very sad. But good news. He said that I should be the next king. So, hooray for me.
Yay.
And, oh yeah, he said that if he once told anyone else they could be king, that he doesn't like them anymore and they should just stay in Normandy.
In other words, William.
And also he said that no one should ask any further questions. Okay, good talk. Go do whatever it is you do. Usually it took months of preparation to crown a new king, but Harold rushed it and he had himself crowned the same day King Edward was buried. In Normandy, William's advisors came to him and said, "Hey Big Willie, bad news, Harald Godwinson has taken the English throne." And William was furious, so he sent an envoy to Harold who said, "William says you stole the throne and demands you immediately return it to him." Let me think about that.
Nope.
No. He said no. That bastard. Wait, I thought you were the bastard. Dude.
That was rude.
Uncool.
Yeah,
William
uncool.
immediately began gathering his armies together and preparing for an invasion of England.
Right, but he's going to be delayed by good old Mother Nature, which is going to work out in his favor in the long run.
Now, killing a king was generally frowned upon in old-timey Europe because they were considered to have been chosen by God himself. So back in Normandy, William had to get God on his side. He needed the Pope's blessing for his conquest. So he went to the Pope and said, "Godwinson made an oath to me over holy relics, and then he usurped the throne. Can I kill him?" Sure, why not? So the Pope gave William his blessing, meaning William now had God on his side.
Yeah, and that's important to keep in mind is, yes, you're king, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can do whatever you want to, or a duke or whatever. You needed to have God on your side. Not just because that's what you believe, but because your people need to believe that. If they don't, you can run into problems if you do get power, if people feel that you defied God's will to do it.
Everything was ready to go. Just one problem. The wind. It was blowing the wrong way, and William had to wait with his army in Normandy, while Godwinson waited with his army in the south of England. They waited, and waited, and waited, and then William said screw it and sailed for England and got shipwrecked because the wind was blowing the wrong way. So then he decided to keep on waiting. They waited for 2 months and the wind never changed. Eventually Godwinson got bored and also ran out of food for his soldiers, so he sent them all home and he returned to London. The south coast was undefended and all William could do was keep waiting. While the northerly wind kept William in Normandy, it was carrying Hardrada and his Viking army to England.
Yep.
Hardrada landed near the old...
And like I said, this works out good for William, because if William had attacked first, he would have been at a disadvantage fighting fresh troops that were there and ready and waiting for him. Harald Hardrada is going to change that equation.
Old Viking city of York and defeated a regional army led by the Northern Earls, and York surrendered. When Godwinson heard about this, he must have been pretty upset. He had just disbanded his army, and now he had to gather them all together again and march all the way north. He made the exhausting journey in just 4 days, which is crazy quick, and he caught the Vikings off guard and unprepared for battle. The two armies stood on either side of the River Derwent. Legend says that a berserker Viking single-handedly held the only bridge crossing the river, dodging arrows and fending off attackers, until some English soldiers got under the bridge in a barrel and gave him the old spear in the jewels. This gave the Vikings enough time to form a shield wall, but because they'd been caught off guard, many weren't wearing their chainmail and armor, and the English eventually defeated them, killing Hardrada, and with him, bringing the Viking era in England to an end.
At first, it seemed like God's against him because he doesn't let him go, but I think, like I said, that works in his favor. God just gave the all-clear signal, time to go.
Finally! William's fleet of over 700 ships and 14,000 men set sail and landed on the English coast at Pevensey and set up camp near Hastings. And Harold was still all the way in York. His exhausted army had to march all the way south just days after their battle with the Vikings. Harold made it to London and considered just staying there and waiting for William to come to him.
Which probably would have been a smarter move.
But William forced Harold's hand by burning down a bunch of villages. Harold's army set out and met William's on the 14th of October, 1066, and both sides prepared themselves for the Battle of Hastings. The English were on a hill, so they decided to stay there because it was a good defensive position. The Normans approached, and the two sides probably spent a while yelling at each other. William and the Normans had a few tactical advantages over the English. The first were the archers. The Normans sent volley after volley of arrows at the English, who formed a shield wall in defense. Then William sent his infantry up the hill. The English threw anything they had at them, and the Normans couldn't break through the shield shield wall. Then the Normans' next tactical advantage came into play. William sent his cavalry up the hill, but even they struggled to break through the shield wall defenses. Wave after wave of infantry and cavalry came, and Harold knew all he had to do was let the Normans exhaust themselves and he would win. But then something a bit strange happened. It's possible the Normans incorrectly believed William had been killed. Maybe they lost their will to fight against the shield wall, or maybe it was an intentional deception tactic. But suddenly, the Norman forces turned and ran away from the English. Believing they had won, the English broke their shield wall and chased down the retreating Normans, who then
which is never a good idea. I wouldn't say never, but you gotta be careful because that can turn into a trap real easy.
Turned around, encircled the English troops, and cut them down. In the chaotic fighting that followed, Harald Godwinson was killed, the most popular theory being that he took an arrow in the eye. The English were defeated, and William had won. He was no more just a bastard. Now, he was a conqueror. At first, the English nobles were reluctant to make him king, but William burned down a few more villages, and the nobles eventually gave in and offered him the crown. As he was coronated, the local villagers in Westminster let out a cheer of support, but William thought it was a riot, so he burned down the village. William then had to go on a long and costly campaign of quelling rebellions and burning down villages all over England to force the people into submission. And England went through a massive transformation under its new Norman rule. English nobles were replaced with Normans. They built castles and grand cathedrals, but one of the most interesting changes occurred within the English language. The Normans brought their dialect of French to England and it merged with Old English in ways we still live with today. First of all, the Normans were obviously the ones in power, so
so that's something that I don't think a lot of people realize or they tend to forget is that there was a period in time, where the British royalty spoke in French because William the Conqueror, he's French, he's a Norman. He speaks French, he makes his court all French. That's going to become the language of the court. So you're going to see a lot of French enter into the court language. Not necessarily the common everyday language, but the court language. That's why you're going to see a lot of French-inspired words for government operations or for things that are more fancy or formal.
Related to power like government, judge, castle, and crown come from the Normans. Words that are considered posher or more refined are usually the Norman ones. At first, the Anglo-Saxons probably weren't that friendly to the Normans, while the Normans likely weren't that amiable towards the Anglo-Saxons. An Anglo-Saxon might come into a room, but a Norman would enter into a chamber. An Anglo-Saxon might buy themselves a shirt, while a Norman would purchase a blouse. And while that filthy peasant's new shirt may be fair, the Norman blouse is absolutely beautiful. The Normans actually considered some Anglo-Saxon words so crude that I can't even say them on YouTube. But there's more. Ask an Anglo-Saxon what job he does, and he might respond with some low-level trade, such as a baker, a miller, or a shoemaker. But a Norman has a skilled trade, like a painter, a tailor, or a merchant. The Anglo-Saxon farmers working in the fields owned many cows, pigs, and sheep, but
this one I know. You're going to see, that's why when we talk about the names of the meat, we're talking about pork, or mutton, and so on. Beef.
Once they were served up in a Norman banquet, they became beef, pork, and mutton. And written English changed too. Since many Anglo-Saxons couldn't write, the written language was romanticized. Your annoying friend that says cool whip might just be speaking an Old English dialect, as the Anglo-Saxons originally wrote it when, where, and what, but the Normans swapped the W and H around, and the long English A vowel sounded more like an O to the Normans, so you can thank them that you live in a home, not a ham. Hey, fun fact about William, the man couldn't read or write, not in French, not in English, not in anything. Well, what if I told you there was a place where you could learn French, English, even Japanese if you wanted, and not...
Okay, this is an old video, so I don't think we need to watch his ad, so we'll go ahead and skip over this. Normally I wouldn't, but since this is so old, we don't need to watch it. And that looked like that was the end of it anyway, so that was fun. Like I said, English history is not my strong point. I don't feel like I added as much as I could, but at least I could add more than I could for the Falklands. I know I went into the Falklands mostly totally ignorant. This one I know a little bit more about because it's such a pivotal event. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please consider supporting Oversimplified. They certainly put a lot of hard work into these videos. And we will be back soon with part 4 of the Miniwars. Until then, thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.